Welcome to 7.8 Sums and Differences of Rational Expressions. So essentially we're dealing with fractions still, and this time we're going to be adding and subtracting those. So what's the key when we're adding and subtracting fractions? We need common denominators. So that's the name of the game today. So let's just dive right into this first example here. All right. So I make note right away, common denominator. We need to identify between 3 and 4 what's the common denominator, or what we can think about is, another way to think about it is the least common multiple, the LCM. So what's the first number that both 3 and 4 go into? And hopefully we recognize that it's 12, okay? So what do I need to do to this first fraction to get our denominator to be 12? Well, we need to multiply the top and the bottom by 4, right? Because we need those common denominators. And what do we need to do to this second guy? Well, I need to multiply the top and the bottom, numerator and denominator, by 3. This is going to get me common denominators. So after we do that, we'll multiply our numerators, all right? And we're going to keep them separated at first. So we'll have 4x minus 12 over 12 minus 3x minus 12 over 12, okay? And now we can go ahead and combine these fractions, these numerators, because the denominators are the same. So now it's just a matter of combining our like terms. So 4x minus 3x gives us x. The minus 12 minus a negative, that goes to plus 12. So minus 12 plus 12 goes to 0, that goes away. So we're simply left with x over 12, and that's as good as we're going to get there. Moving on to the next example, we can take a look at our denominators first. So I notice that they're different, but they're kind of similar. So I'm going to look at this guy and kind of do a little side note, all right? So if we take this 3y minus 2x, what do we notice? Well, if we can factor out a negative, if I factor out a negative, then I'm at negative 3y plus 2x, and we can rearrange that. We can say it's the opposite of 2x minus 3y. Now, why would I do that? Well, then my denominators will be the same, essentially. Okay, so what's going to happen is this minus and this negative is going to go to a plus. So I'm really going to change that to a plus. This first fraction, this first rational expression, stays as is. And now, because I changed that to a plus, because it's 3 over this negative 2y, or negative 2x minus 3y, okay? Those are equivalent, okay? And so it's going to be plus, and then our denominator is going to be 2x minus 3y. So now that our denominators are the same, we can go ahead and combine the numerators. So 6 plus 3 is where we get our answer of 9, and we keep the denominator 2x minus 3y. Now this is as good as it gets. Let's move on to our next example. All right, so now our denominators, we take a look at them, right? We have x plus 1, we have x minus 1. Those are not the same. There's no way I could factor out a negative like the previous example. So again, first thing we need to do is figure out what the common denominator is. So I double check that the denominators are fully factored, all right? And I walk through and I say, okay, my first denominator has an x plus 1, so I know I'm going to need an x plus 1. My second denominator is x minus 1. Since this is different than the first factor of x plus 1, I need to write that down. So I have x minus 1. So my common denominator is going to be x plus 1, x minus 1. So now I just go through each term and I say, well, what am I missing? Well, in this term, we're missing that x minus 1. So that means I need to multiply the numerator and the denominator of this first guy by x minus 1. And what are we missing in this second rational expression portion? We're missing an x plus 1. So we need to multiply the numerator and the denominator by x plus 1. When we clean up each numerator now, we're going to keep those separated. So this first one, x minus 1 times 2x minus 1, we're going to get 2x squared minus 3x plus 1 over our new denominator now is x minus 1, x plus 1. We're subtracting. When I multiply these two factors together, we're going to get 2x squared plus x minus 1 all over now our common denominator, x minus 1, x plus 1. Now that our denominators are the same, we can go ahead and combine our numerators. Okay, so gathering up our like terms, we have 2x squared minus 2x squared. So guess what? Those go away. Negative 3x minus x. So that puts us at negative 4x. And then finally, plus 1 minus a negative 1 goes to plus 2. And we're going to keep our denominator of x minus 1, x plus 1. Now we have to figure out if this is fully simplified. So we better make sure we factor to see if we can cancel anything. Okay? So I'm going to factor the numerator. I can pull a negative 2 out from that numerator. And when we do that, we're going to be left with negative 2 times 2x minus 1 all over our denominator, x minus 1, x plus 1. And it just so happens that nothing cancels, so I'm going to leave my answer in factored form and move on. Let's go ahead and try this next example here. All right, so I take a look, and remember the first thing we always identify are the denominators. Now they look the same, 1 minus x and 1 minus x, but notice here, this is 1 minus x squared. So essentially there are two factors of 1 minus x. So to determine our common denominator, we go through and we write down every factor of our first denominator. So that's going to be simply 1 minus x. Now this second denominator, as I mentioned, this 1 minus x squared, that's like saying 1 minus x times 1 minus x. So this first 1 minus x is a repeat. Okay? I already have a 1 minus x written, so I wouldn't write this one again. However, I don't have two 1 minus x's written over here. So I need to include another 1 minus x in my common denominator. Okay? So really we could say, oh, well, our common denominator is 1 minus x quantity squared. Okay? So with that said, if that's our common denominator, I take a look and I say, well, if we have 1 minus x here, what are we missing? We're missing another 1 minus x. So we need to multiply this first guy, the numerator and the denominator, by 1 minus x. This second guy, this second denominator, that's good to go. We don't need to multiply that one. It already has our common denominator. So now we can go ahead and clean up each of these terms individually. So 3 times 1 minus x is going to give us 3 minus 3x over 1 minus x quantity squared. And then our second factor, our second fraction, our second rational piece, stays 4 over 1 minus x quantity squared. So now that we have common denominators, we can go ahead and combine our numerators. So looking at our like terms, 3 plus 4 is where we get 7, and then there is no other x term, so we simply have 7 minus 3x over the quantity 1 minus x squared. 7 minus 3x doesn't factor any further. 7 minus 3x also doesn't cancel with 1 minus x quantity squared, so that's as good as we can get. Now moving on to this next example, I want you guys to try this one on your own. The key is, first we need to factor this denominator. So we'll go ahead and do that first together. Okay, so we want to factor that. So we'll keep our numerator, x minus y, and our denominator, x squared minus y squared, difference of squares. So we get x plus y, x minus y, and do we notice anything at that point? Plus 1 over 2x plus 3y. That stays. That's as factored as that gets. So what you should notice is, hey, the numerator and the denominator have an x minus y. Why don't we clean that up first to make our lives a little easier? So the x minus y's cancel, and we're really left with 1 over x plus y plus 1 over 2x plus 3y. All right, I want you to figure out your common denominator, what you have to multiply each fraction, each part by to get those common denominators. Go ahead and finish this problem, completely simplify, and check back when you are done. Okay, so I haven't completed the problem quite yet, but hopefully you recognize the common denominator is going to be x plus y, 2x plus 3y. So we need to multiply the first term by 2x plus 3y over 2x plus 3y, and the second by x plus y over x plus y. Cleaning up this first denominator, 1 times that quantity is simply 2x plus 3y. 1 times this quantity is simply x plus y. Now we have common denominators, so we can go ahead and combine our numerators. So 2x plus 1x is going to be 3x. 3y plus y is going to be plus 4y, all over x plus y times 2x plus 3y. Just double checking, can our numerator factor any further? Our answer is no. Can 3x plus 4y cancel with any of these two factors? Again, our answer is no. So this lends itself to being our final answer. All right. Finally, on to the very last problem. X plus 2 minus x squared plus x minus 6 over x minus 3. Now, what we can look at here is this x term is simply x over 1. This 2 is simply 2 over 1. And now we have this x minus 3 in the denominator. So when figuring out the common denominator, well, I could write 1 down as one of the factors, and this is a repeat, but really the main focus here is this x minus 3. So our common denominator is going to be x minus 3. So I need to multiply this guy by x minus 3 over x minus 3. And this guy as well by x minus 3 over x minus 3. So that this first guy, x times x minus 3 over x minus 3, is going to go to x squared minus 3x over x minus 3, plus, distributing in that 2x minus 6 over x minus 3, and then finally minus x squared plus x minus 6 over x minus 3. So now we have all three terms have the same denominator, so we can go ahead and combine our numerators with our like terms. Starting with this x squared, I've got no x squared here, but then I'm subtracting an x squared. So those guys essentially cancel each other. Now we have negative 3x plus 2x, so that gets us at negative 1x minus x. So that puts us overall at negative 2x. Finally, no constant here. A negative 6 minus a negative 6, so that goes negative 6 plus 6. Those guys essentially cancel. And we're stuck with just 2x in our numerator. We keep the denominator as x minus 3. No factors cancel, so we have our final answer as negative 2x over x minus 3. So the name of the game here, guys, is when we're adding and subtracting fractions, we need those common denominators. So you have to identify the common denominator first and determine what fraction is missing what piece of that denominator, multiplying the numerator and denominator by those. If you do have any questions, make sure you ask in class. See you later.